Hey guys, Wade Willis here doing my playthrough of Umineko. Still, it is kind of setting up the story. It seems like we are kind of learning that there is some animosity between the help and the rich family, which kind of makes sense. A lot of them are kind of jerks to the servants, and then actually one of the servants is kind of we have kind of like a Downton Abbey thing where there's like power plays. There's a guy who has more experience, but he's newer in the house, and he's kind of throwing some of the younger people who have been there longer under the bus. So, some interesting dynamics there. And yeah, we're going to get into it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, helps a ton. She's a long term servant who served here since she was 6 years old. Her appearance has changed so much that I couldn't match her to the person in my memories, but we both have known each other 6 years. Both knew each other 6 years ago. That shy part of her had always been there, but she did seem to have developed the allure you would expect from a girl her age. Especially in her breasts, yes. This freaking guy, huh? That kid we met earlier, Kevin-kun, is her little brother. He's not exactly my little brother. Still, he loves me like a big sister. He loves you more than that. He didn't cause you any trouble, did he? Haha! He's the same as always. If only he were just a little bit more sociable. I apologize if he caused you any trouble. Nah, he didn't cause any trouble at all. As a fellow man, I understand how moody you can get at that age. It's no surprise he's unsociable. Ooh! I get called that all the time too. I get called unsociable. Just like Canon. Ooh! You aren't unsociable at all, Maria-sama. Ooh? Wanted to be like him. Ooh. You said the meal was ready, right? Ah, yes. I'm sorry. Your meal has been fully prepared, so please allow me to guide you all to the mansion. Shannon bowed again and formally returned to her duty mode. We realized if we made her stick around for any more light conversation, it would actually make it harder for her to do her job. We got up off our butts to avoid interfering with her work any further. So, shall we go to the mansion? Everyone's probably hungry, right? Yeah. I'm really looking forward to Goda-san's food. That guy was apparently a chef at this famous hotel, so he's super good at cooking. Oh! I can't wait! Let's go, Maria! We're gonna stuff ourselves like pigs. Ooh! Stuff ourselves like pigs! No. You can't take everything Battler-kun says seriously, okay? Because he's always just joking around. Okay, let's go. Met once again by the magnificent rose garden, we continued onward as the intimidating mansion of the Ushiromiya head family came to view. It had apparently been built shortly after the war, so you could feel the dignity of almost a half-century hanging about it. The building was gorgeous on the surface, but as old as it was, equipment such as its AC and heating were apparently quite frail. According to Jessica, midwinter was especially tough with all that drafts. Haven't these people ever heard of kotatsu? As we entered the entrance hall, an aged servant greeted us. Now him I remember. Genji-san, who had been working here longer than anyone, filled the role of head servant. Battler-sama, it has been quite some time since we last met. As our eyes met, he greeted me with a calm, composed voice. His bow wasn't as graceful or refined as Goda's, but despite its simplicity, it communicated his feelings very well. Genji-san, it really has been a while. You look well. Thank you. I have been well. And Battler-sama, you have become a splendid young man. You are beginning to resemble the master in his youth. I look like grandfather? Guess that means grandfather was pretty popular with the ladies when he was young. From here on, I shall take Shannon's place and accompany you. Please come this way. Shannon-chan bowed deeply and watched us leave. After that, we headed towards the dining room under Genji's guidance. Genji-san, just like Kumasawa-san, stood in stark contrast to us young people who had grown beyond recognition over the last 6 years. His appearance was exactly the same as in my memories from 6 years ago. It was as though the time had stopped since the last time we met. Genji-san was an extremely quiet and diligent person. He was basically grandfather's close aide or caregiver, and you might even call him grandfather's companion of many years. In fact, it seems he was my grandfather's side even more often than my late grandmother was. According to Jessica, grandfather trusted him more than any of his blood relatives. But I wonder how long he served. I never got the details, but I heard something about him being here since the very beginning, when the mansion was first constructed, which would mean that he's dedicated half of his life to serving you. It's easy to see why he's so trusted. As we passed through the massive hall that extended up into the second story of the mansion with no separating floor, I spotted something that hadn't existed in my memory 6 years ago. I think this might be important. Oh. Oh, this is very important. They're making a big deal of this. Okay, this girl's on the cover and stuff. I think that's the witch he might be in love with or something. Oh, oops. It was an awfully big portrait hanging right in front of the stairs that rose to the second floor. Without thinking, I stopped walking, captivated by it. Since I stopped so fast, Maria, who was following behind me, ran into my back. Ooh! Ah, sorry. Hey, Jessica. Has that picture always been there? I pointed out the big, prominently displayed portrait in the hall. Everyone else stopped too. Oh, right. When you last came here, that hadn't been hung yet, had it? When was it again? Well, if my memory doesn't fail me, it was put on display sometime around the year before last. You are correct, sir. In April of the year before last, the master had put it on display here, having previously ordered a painter to create it. Grandfather did that? So he paid to have it painted just for him, huh? The portrait suited this western mansion, and that woman in the elegant dress gave off a sense of refinement. I couldn't have guessed her age, but her sharp eyes and the strong will she seemed to possess made her look youthful. She seemed somehow different from the composed middle-aged woman you often see in famous pictures. If she had normal black hair, I'd assumed it was the portrait of my long-deceased grandmother in her prime. However, she had beautiful blonde hair and didn't look Japanese at all. So, just who is this lady? Maria answered the simple question enthusiastically, as though proud she knew the answer. Ooh, I know. She's Beatrice. Bea what? Beatrice. She's a witch. Didn't you ever hear stories about her long ago? A witch? You mean the witch of this island? Oh. I think I already said this, but Rokkenjima is a small island only 10 kilometers in circumference. However, that's actually pretty massive considering that only the Ushiromiya family lives here. So only the harbor and the area around the mansion were set up to be lived in. Beyond that, the island remained as untouched as when it was uninhabited. The vast and empty forest had absolutely no lights, phones, or people passing through. To understand how dangerous that is, you need to forget your common sense as a city dweller. After all, if you happen to fall down a hole in the depths of the forest or sprain your ankle, no one would come to save you, no matter how much you cried or screamed. That's scary. Then, once the sun went down, the forest would be wrapped in complete darkness since there were no street lights. And since there were no signs, it'd be easy to get lost and confused, losing your sense of direction inside that dark forest. Nowadays, most people see a forest as a peaceful place. But to the people of bygone eras before the light of civilization drove out the night, forests were as geographically separated from civilizations as the sea. They were oceans above the ground. Fishermen who would go out in the ocean put their lives at risk despite their technical knowledge. In the same way, hunters who go out into the forest are in danger despite having specialized knowledge of their own. If children were to go to play in such dangerous forests, something terrible might happen. Someone's parents might have thought so. Maybe grandmother first said it, or maybe grandfather himself. Or perhaps the story's been passed down on this island since ancient times. There's a terrible witch in the forest, so you must not go in. At some point, this ghost story of Rokunjima was born. This is the legend of the Rokunjima's witch. That's why when we talk about the witch of the island, we're referring to the master of that vast and savage forest. Come to think of it, when I stayed in the mansion as a little kid, during those eerie nights when the wind and rain pounded on the windows, I remember being terrified by the story of the forest witch who roamed around searching for human sacrifices. She does not sound chill at all. So, Beatrice, huh? When Aniki mentioned it, I searched my memory and was sure I recalled hearing the name like that when I was little. I see. Still, I totally forgot the witch in that legend had such an elegant name like Beatrice. So did grandfather go out of his way to have a portrait made just because we grandchildren didn't believe the story? She's the witch from grandfather's delusions. Ever since he's had this picture hang, he's been having a harder and harder time telling the difference between truth and fantasy. To us, she's just a witch that exists in grandfather's mind. But to him, she's the being that exists on this island. Exists. He says he had the painting made because the rest of us would be incapable of understanding otherwise. The whole thing's creepy as hell. Milady, this portrait is precious to the master. I beg of you, do not say such things in front of him. I know. Even if you didn't tell me, I'd never do something like that. Jessica glanced at the portrait with an irritated gaze before turning away. Let's go. We're making everyone wait on the dining room. Ooh, I'm hungry. Only a small portion of the island was controlled by the Ushiromiya family. All of the lawless remainder was the domain of the witch Beatrice. You might even call her the true ruler of Rokunjima. I felt a faint revival of that unsettling sense of misfortune, which I'd felt when I learned of the tutelary god shrine being struck by lightning. And I remembered that Kumasawa-san tried to tell an ominous story about Rokunjima before Jessica stopped her. I don't know what she was planning to tell us about this island, but I do know one thing. It isn't the Ushiromiya family that rules Rokunjima. It's the witch Beatrice. That's right. After all, this is the witch's island. Battler! Ooh, you're slow! When I looked around, everyone was already heading towards the dining room. I hurriedly chased after them. Yeah, she looks almost like one of those creepy porcelain doll things. We walked up to the double doors that led to the dining room. Oh man. Genji-san knocked. I have brought the children. Please pardon the intrusion. The doors were opened and we were invited inside. The dining room, which looked exactly like you would imagine a rich person's dining room to be, had a super long table that was obviously positioned with no purpose other than to make guests conscious of their rank. Gotta love rich people. Our parents were already sitting in accordance with that ordering. You're late, brats. Hurry up and take a seat. The old bastard pressed us to sit. The only gaps in the group were of people where the spots supposed to sit, which only made us feel our tardiness even more. The seat at the head of the table, called the incipient chair, was for the most highly ranked, reserved for grandfather. It was still empty. He probably wanted us to show up last for a dramatic effect. From the perspective of someone facing the incipient chair head on, the seating order went from left to right, with the lower ranking seats progressing in rows of two further away from it. So the left-hand side, the first row, closest to the incipient chairs, was Uncle Cross would have sat, since he was the second highest in rank. It looked like he hadn't arrived yet, so that seat was empty. Across from his chair to the right of the first row was the eldest daughter of the family, Aunt Ava, who was the third highest in rank. On the left-hand side of the second row was the fourth highest rank. There sat my damn dad, Rudolph, the third of the siblings. Across from him on the right side of the second row was Aunt Rosa, the youngest sibling. At this point, you might expect their husbands and wives to come next. But nope. On the left side of the seat, third row, rank number 6 belonged to Jessica. Opposite her was George. I sat next to Jessica, and Maria sat across from me. Then finally next to me on the left side of the 5th row sat Aunt Natsui, the 10th highest rank. Opposite her was Uncle Hideyoshi. Next to Nat Natsui in the 6th row and final seat on the left-hand side sat Kirie-san. The seat opposite to Kirie-san was empty, even though Silver Robin sat there and everything. According to this ranking system, that spot was where Aunt Rosa's husband should be sitting. Even though he wasn't supposed to be coming, his place was made up. Normally, ranking systems of this sort give spouses equal position to their partners, but in the Ushiromiya family, system was unique. Maybe it's a remnant of male chauvinism. If you start with the assumption that a woman's womb is just something to be borrowed, then the children of the direct descendant would come first, directly followed by the grandchildren. In other words, spouses have no blood ties and are therefore placed at the end of the line. It's terrible, but by this system, my grandmother, who would be ranked even lower than me if she was still alive. In their youth, they obeyed their father. After they get married, their husband, after aging, their children. There's the old saying, women have no home in any realm. That's super messed up. Long ago, when I was still incapable of figuring all this out, I had thought it was so great that we could all chat in our little groups, adult siblings with adult siblings and cousins with cousins. However, now that I can re-examine the seating order after growing up a bit, it stirs up some complicated feelings in me. Aunt Natsui, who was married to the eldest son and was a de facto number 2 managing this family, sat to my right, which meant that she was 2 steps lower than me in the ranking order. It was hard to imagine what might be going on inside her heart. That's why I made small apologetic gesture towards her before sitting down. Probably why she's kind of being a biatch. How nice to see you, Battler-kun. You've grown quite tall, haven't you? Oh, yep. 6 long years of eating well, sampling various cuisines, and deriving sustenance from Mother Earth's bountiful gifts. Hard work, but I pulled through. Fucking dork. Growing just like a boy, I see. How tall are you now? I guess about 180 centimeters. But, Aunt Natsui, that's where you're supposed to say, heck, that sounds like all you did was eat. Huh? Oh, ha, sorry. After a short pause, she did laugh with me, but it seemed like she couldn't quite figure out what she was supposed to be laughing at. This woman is Aunt Natsui. She's the wife of the eldest son of the family, meaning that she's my father's older brother's wife. Is it simpler to just call her Jessica's mother? Yes. It feels bad to say it like this, but while I didn't exactly dislike her, I didn't particularly like her either. Yeah, I'm not surprised. She hardly ever spoke with us kids, and all my memories involve her talking to the adults about complicated things with a scary look on her face. In fact, we hardly ever exchanged words, and I spent a long time trying to figure out how I should approach her, though my efforts seemed to have ended in failure. The silverware sat neatly on the table, but the meal itself hadn't been brought in yet. As a general rule, you couldn't start the meal until the person sitting at the head of the table had arrived. So as long as grandfather didn't come, lunch would be put on hold indefinitely. Not even the appetizers would arrive. Simply put, the silence in this room was caused by our parents enduring hunger while they waited for grandfather to arrive. However, the grandfather from my memories would always show up on time to meals like this. He was the kind of person who would never be so late that people would be kept meeting, especially after the entire group had arrived. Grandfather's pretty late. As far as I can remember, he was always strict about time. Well, that might have been true 6 years ago, but it hasn't been that way lately. In fact, he's off in his own little world so often that he doesn't even show up to family meals. Still, I figure he'd at least come down today. Then again, I feel a lot more relaxed and happy without him. Jessica! When her mother scolded her, Jessica stuck her tongue out and looked away. No way around it. Might as well wait until our host arrives. When I glanced at the clock, I saw that it was almost 12:20. Ushiromiya Kinzo, the aged family head of the Ushiromiya head family. This man could be seen in his study. The clock had already passed noon, but he didn't even attempt to rise from his seat. With his spectacles on, he built up a glowing pile of books with unraveled bindings which he read intently. You couldn't really say that he was having too much fun to stop. Rather, he filled the room with a sense of impatience and perhaps a sense of impending danger, as though every second wasted was a tragedy. In this sealed room, a dense dust danced through the air, which was thick with a stench of chemicals that exuded a mix of suspicious odors. Those odors were somehow sweet and heavy. If anyone with a normal nose came in here, the first thing they would do is open a window to ventilate this room. This knocking against the study door had been going on for a while. A voice calling "Father" sometimes mingled with the knocks. As Kinzo heaved a deep sigh, he snapped the old book in his hands and slammed it on the table. Then he yelled at Krause, who was still knocking at the door. "Silence! Enough with the racket, you fool! Who told you the door would be opened if you but knocked? I'll crucify the imbecile. Do you wish to suffer the same fate?" "Father, this is the day of the family conference, which happens only once a year, is it not? Everyone's gathered below. Please come out." Krause called to his father through the door. Kinzo always shut himself up in the studio, hating it when nearly anyone, even his family, entered the room. For that reason, Krause had no choice but to call on him through the corridor like this. "Molest me not! Just who in this every which you speak? Do you mean the fools trying to drag me out of here? Then kill them all! Tear them apart, use their bodies for firewood, and feed them into the witch's hearth. Put a pot in that hearth to boil the wormwood. Force the imbeciles who dare try to lure me out of here to drink the broth of the apocalypse. I will soak their dregs in liquor. Ah, where's Genji? Call for Genji. Have my demonic absinthe prepared. The whispering of green fairy reaches me no longer. Ah, where's Genji? Bring him here!" On the other side of the door, Krause, Nanjo, and Genji kept waiting for the master of the house, who was stubbornly refusing to come out. "Humph. Looks like he hates me to the core." My voice doesn't reach him anymore. Krause shrugged, as though saying it's no use, and smiled bitterly. From the beginning, he hadn't expected this to work, expected his father to respond to his calls. However, since it was a duty of the eldest son, he had tried as a formality. "Kinzo-san, your sons, daughters, and grandchildren have come to see you, have they not? Could you just let them see your face, if only for a short while?" "Shut up! Be silent! You dare admonish me, Nanjo!" I never told anyone to get you. I told them to get Genji. Now call him immediately. Time is short and the apostles are readying their trumpets. So why can't you foolish sheep understand? Kinzo slammed an old heavy book against the table over and over. That racket clearly expressed his great displeasure. This guy is so extra. Kinzo put down his spectacles and flew up from his chair. He spread his arms wide open as if to sing a packed opera house, as if appealing to someone, and yelled, "Why? Why is there always something in my way? I would throw it all away. I would offer up everything. And there is only one thing I would ask in repayment. Oh, Beatrice, if I could see your smile but just one more time, I would plunder the smiles of earth and offer them all up to you. Oh, commanders of the legions of locusts, reap of smiles of earth. Everything is filthy. Everything is irksome. Why must I suffer this impediment on the most precious of days? Call for Genji! I have no idea what he's yelling about. He's probably lost his mind by now. Croissant. Isn't it a bit harsh to say such things of your own father? My father is already dead. There's nothing here but a phantom of who my father once was. At any rate, as long as he has no intention of coming out, there's nothing we can do. Kinzo-san. Choking coughs continued to pour from the study. I'm going back downstairs. It would be a waste of time to let the fruits of Goda's prized cooking talent get any colder. It's one of the few things our relatives can look forward to when they come to this house. Huh. Lovely family. Crush spun around. He looked at his watch, mumbling and acting as though he had wasted time doing something he knew would be in vain. Genji-san, father's calling for you. Keep him company. Certainly. Dr. Nanjo, let's go eat. If we stay here any longer, the sweet stench will ruin our sense of taste. Without warning, Nanjo and Kraus went downstairs. Genji urged Nanjo to go eat. Nanjo glanced between the study door and Kraus's back as the latter disappeared down the stairs and then let out a deep sigh. Sorry, Genji-san, but please allow me to leave this in your hands. Yes, please leave it to me. Do what you can to avoid giving him alcohol. That's a habit far too difficult to break. Is Genji not here yet? Who dares keep Genji from coming? Oh, where's Genji? Call for Genji! Please, allow me to handle the situation here. Very well. Forgive me. Nanjo bowed slightly and descended the stairs. Genji watched him leave, then knocked on the study door. Master, it's Genji. Genji! Why have you kept me waiting so long? You're alone, I trust? Correct. I am alone. Kinzo returned to his seat in the study and pressed an old-fashioned switch on the table. After a small delay, the heavy sound of the door unlocking could be heard. Kinzo was convinced that the family had wanted to make a mess of his study, or perhaps that someone had opened the window for some air and ended up scattering things to him that were important research materials, leaving him in a terrible mood. Kinzo had outfitted his room with a formidable lock, preventing anyone from entering without his permission and thereby sealing himself off in a jail of his own making. Genji, whom he trusted the most, was relatively free to enter the room, but even that didn't always hold. If Kinzo was bad, even Genji wouldn't be able to enter. Anyone else would be limited to holding a conversation through a door, unable to even see Kinzo's face. And most of the time, what they got could hardly be called a conversation. However, this didn't trouble the rest of the family much. After all, it wasn't worth the effort to disturb this aging family head who was impossible to please and had always stayed shut away, immersed in his research. It's Kinzo, sorry, is his name. Taking advantage of his refusal to leave his room, they supported his isolation, putting his care entirely in the hands of the servants. What? This is not a chill family. Genji, my usual. I'm busy. Yes, sir. Genji headed to the corner of the study. Their suspicious-looking bottles boasting venomous colors were on display. They were actually liquor, but considering the shady atmosphere of this room, one might easily suspect them of being some ghastly poison. Inside the study was a mysterious collection of books gathered by Kinzo had grown into a mountain. They were bizarre, ancient, or banned books, all of them either forbidden, cursed, or sealed. But if you tried to call them old books, Kinzo would fly into a rage and say, "Call them grimoires!" Oh! There were also many mysterious objects that presumably held some meaning with regards to black magic, like candles suspiciously melted and molded into strange shapes. The constellations drawn on certain celestial globes contain quite a few shapes that would draw puzzle looks from anyone familiar with today's night sky. The careless strewn about books contain many illustrations, all of them religious or mysterious in nature, including some depicting demonically grotesque subjects or bizarre diagrams of various magic circles. And above all, a sweet, poisonous smell filled the room and profoundly assaulting the eyes and noses of those who entered for the first time. Eventually, it must surely make a person go numb and lose their grip on reality. Inside that study, Genji prepared Kinzo's usual drink with a well-trained hand. No one would even think of drinking such an ominous dark green liquid in that complex and ornate glass, unless someone first told them it was alcohol. He poured a little into the glass. Then he placed a cube of sugar in a strangely shaped spoon and poured the water from the pitcher over it. Strangely, when the transparent water was poured, the dark green liquid turned cloudy white. What? It was a strange optical illusion, as though the water had caused a chemical reaction that made a drink become even more unrecognizable as liquor. Then Genji added some flavors Kinzo loved, fine-tuning its taste. There was no recipe. Its success was measured only by Kinzo's mood swings when he drank it, and it had taken Genji many decades to learn how to do it right. Genji placed the glass on a tray and walked over to Kinzo. By this time, Kinzo was gazing out the window. "Here, master." "Thank you." Kinzo had regained his composure and was now unrecognizable as the shouting, screaming, yelling man from a few moments ago. Looking at this man from behind his tilted glass and gazed down at the scenery beyond the window, he projected a sense of dignity and intelligence. To allow Kinzo to set his glass down at any time, Genji motionlessly waited behind Kinzo and to his left, as though he was a living sideboard. Then, without averting his eyes from the window, Kinzo held out his glass. There was only a mouthful remaining. There was not a gesture intended to set it upon the tray, but a motion to hand the glass over to Genji. "Drink, my friend. Your words are too kind for me. No need for ceremony between us. Drink, my friend." "Thank you." Genji respectfully received the glass and inclined it a little to taste its contents. After that, he gulped it down. "I attempted to imitate your concoction, but no matter how I try, I can't replicate the taste. The way you make it is pure relish. Thank you very much. It is the fruit of your guidance, master." "Humph." Kinzo smiled at his loyal subject, who refused to put aside rank even when asked to. However, he was not making fun of him. His smile was relaxed, as though chuckling to a close friend of an old, unshakable habit. "We have grown old together. I stopped counting the years long ago. It is entirely thanks to you, master, that I have been able to live like this until today." Kinzo gave a faint smile, as if to say he didn't need any flattery. "Until now, you have served me exceedingly well. My sons call me eccentric. The servants that were once many have all quit in fear of me. Only you serve me even now. Your words are more than I deserve. My life will not last much longer. My sons are vultures, lazily waiting for my inheritance to fall into their hands. Krus is a fool who squanders money like water, who throws away 2 gold coins to obtain 1. And then he has the gall to claim that he's earned money. Ava is the slave to money, who thinks of me as a mere chicken. When I die, she plans to use my bones to make a broth. That dunce Rudolph wants to fool around with women. Rosa bore the baby of a man who came from nowhere and about to whom we know nothing. Jessica is incompetent and uneducated. George has none of what it takes to be a man. Battler is a fool who threw away the honor of the Urusharomia family. And Maria is obscene to the eye. Why is the Urusharomia blood so incompetent? Is there no one worthy to inherit the glory I built? Ah, of course I know this is part of Beatrice's curse. I know it. Ha! You golden witch! Are you trying to take revenge against me this way? If you want to hate me, then do so. If you want to run away, then run. I won't let you go. I won't let you go. I won't let you go. You belong to me. You must always be in my arms. For all my life, you must stay in my birdcage for all eternity, whispering only to me. Beatrice, why won't you smile back at me? Oh! Oh! Beatrice! Oh! After howling, Kinzo choked once again. Genji set the tray down and rubbed his master's back. Genji's facial expression did not change. It was always like this. Cough. Thank you, my friend. When his seemingly deranged fit subsided, Kinzo regained his composure once again. It was like seeing 2 different people, a wild Kinzo and a composed Kinzo, living together inside one body. And so, I have decided. I cannot bear to spend my dim remaining years procrastinating like this. If I have one final coin to bet, then I choose to abandon it to the whims of the demon's roulette. The power of magic is always determined by the risk of the gamble. Like visiting the shrine at the hour of the ox in an ancient Japanese sorcery to nail a cursed doll to a tree. Magical power is produced specifically because of the risk that has been seen within the 7 days the curse takes. The greater the risk, the stronger the magic power will be. This is not good. Many miracles that happen in myth might be called the crystallization of shocking magic power. With a low probability of occurrence and astronomical risk, that Moss parted the waters of sea was not a miracle. Oh, Moses, sorry. Was not a miracle of God. The risk of that desperate situation, cornered by soldiers on the Red Sea shores, weighed upon the scales of slaughter and that gave birth to that miraculous magic power. If the same thing occurred again on the same scale, the sea would surely fail to part. After all, Moses was magnificently summoned a miracle engraved on him, but not one of countless innumerable results on the roulette of those with power. Oh, sorry, that pronunciation and all that. This is a force that can triumph over astronomical odds. Indeed, good fortune that can grasp miracles is magical power itself. To obtain this mighty power, one must face the risk of despair. Those who possess no magical power may call it desperation rather than a bet. However, people who truly do possess magical power can grasp a hold of that miracle and make an enigma come into being. And if that power exists within me, I'll seize that miracle. I'll have a chance at making the wish I devoted my life toward come true. Kinzo looked up to the sky outside his window. He spread his arms as if appealing to someone in the skies. If only I were capable of grasping that miracle. Oh, Beatrice! Beatrice, show me your lovely smile once more. No matter how much time passes, your face does not vanish. I just want to see your smile, that's all. I'll return everything you granted me. I'll return the glory I've gained since that day. I don't need fortune, prestige, or gold. I'll return everything you gave me. I just want to see your smile. I beg you, Beatrice. Oh, oh. His nonsensical yells became a scream, and then a wail. Kinzo slumped on the floor, tearing at it with both hands. Genji had no choice but to wordlessly watch over his master's lamentations. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the family's health is not at its best. He seemed extremely sad and not able to share, sad not to be able to share lunch with you all. Now that you have gathered for this event that occurs but once a year, Goda, let the lunch begin. Certainly, I shall begin today's luncheon. Dr. Nanjo, is father's condition really that bad? Couldn't he have at least let us see his face? It's more of a problem of mood than a physical condition. And for that, there is no medicine I can prescribe. Hey, are we talking about his mood again? You've got to be kidding me. We took time out of our schedules during that damn busy autumn season just to come and find out how he's doing. And now he's... Huh. Then you should be happy, Rudolph. You now know how he's doing. Or would you rather take my place and try to persuade our ill-humored father to come join us? Are you kidding? Rudolph shrugged. Apparently, though, Rudolph was willing to be indignant of how self-centered his father was. He wasn't particularly disappointed to be spared a face-to-face meeting. Does it seem like his mood will improve before dinner, Kraus? I have no idea. If you want to know that, you should ask him directly. Although I think his mood will improve faster if we don't bother him. Genji's the only one who can get grandfather out of a funk. It's pretty pathetic, though. Making the servant deal with your own parents' bad mood? Jessica, don't speak out of turn. She's planned for her complaint to be heard only by her cousins, but it had reached even Kraus's ears. Scolded Jessica scowled and turned away sulking. If he's as cranky as they make him sound, he can't be that terribly sick, right? I mean, they're saying he's in a bad mood, but he's not that he's got no energy, which at least proves that he's got his wits about him. It's because grandfather has especially strong willpower. However, that doesn't necessarily mean his body will be able to keep up, since last year they say he only has 3 months left. If the initial diagnosis was correct, grandfather has been prolonging his life by willpower alone. It's right for us to worry about him. Lunch started with the family's head, seat still empty. The man who should be sitting there had already grown old, and the brilliant glory which had rebuilt the Ushiromiya family in the span of a single lifetime was being forgotten. Even though they were still beginning the meal with that seat still empty, no one felt that was odd anymore. Oh. Okay, we're moving past lunch. Oh. The Ushiromiya Family Conference was held once every year in the first weekend of October. If normal family were to hold a so-called family conference, you'd expect there to be nothing more than a reunion of rarely seen relatives who greet each other around buckets of sushi or something. However, part of the family's great fortune had been lent out to grandfather's children, and no one in this family was considered an adult until they had met with success in business, so this meeting was literally a conference. How much of the fortune was invested, what sort of business was conducted, how much profit was earned, as a result of how much fortune borrowed from the main family could be repaid. Or possibly how much more could be borrowed for future business ventures? What lessons had they learned and what could they learn from their mistakes? It seemed that topics like this were discussed very seriously in the past. My dad said it was like lying on a bed of nails. Apparently, it used to be a very serious family meeting where people were bathed in scornful and angry voices, and some people even got slapped despite of their age. However, that had become a thing of the past. Now, with everyone pursuing their own business ventures and achieving success, it was becoming more of a normal yearly get together. Even so, telling grandfather about the recent events was extremely stressful. So, while it was nothing more than a simple get together for us grandchildren, it was still a real stomachache for our parents. The absence of the man who was the source of all this trouble, regardless of the reason, probably made today's lunch taste even more delicious. The phrase, "while the demon is not around, everyone can relax," comes to mind. That's like when the cat's away, the mice will play. I think that's the right. Yeah, that's the same. Anyway, let's introduce Jessica's father, whose face I hadn't seen in 6 years. The man sitting to my father's left, his older brother, and Jessica's father. His name sure is easy to read. Kraus. Now that we've gotten used to this string of weird names, our perspective is totally skewed. So Kraus doesn't actually seem that bad. It even starts to sound kind of cool. Just like with Aunt Natsui, I didn't have many memories of speaking with Uncle Kraus. He had never been one to chat to children, and I felt like he was always talking with the adults, just like Natsui. According to my father's gossip, he was a spiteful and violent man. If what he said was true, Uncle Kraus used to be very domineering from his position as the oldest sibling, and was despised by all the other siblings. Though despite that, those siblings all seemed to be chatting happily together. Oh well, even if their relationship was bad when they were children, sometimes when people grow up and live apart from each other, their relationships change. That's probably what this was. After all, they all had children of about the same age. By sharing this same family environment, they probably profited by exchanging opinions. Maybe because of that, a short while ago, the circle of parents began discussing the exams Jessica and I would be taking. Jessica, in order to escape from questions about exams from my father on her left, purposely faced right while firing off a series of random comments, not giving him any chance to get a word in. Moving on, let's take a look at the end opposite from Kraus and the others. In the very last seat of the table, an old gentleman with a sturdy physique, aka fat, sat facing Kirie-san. This was my first time meeting him. I had only just been introduced to him, but it seems like he is my grandfather's personal doctor, a man called Nanjo. I had heard he used to own a huge clinic in the nearby island of Nijima, but he turned it over to his son and began living a life of leisure in his old age. He had known my grandfather since the very beginning, when the mansion was first constructed on this island, and built up a relationship over several decades. I thought the first of the two of them might have gotten to know each other through grandfather's suspicious hobbies, but it seems he was actually my grandfather's chess partner. I see. That kind of hobby seems very like our grandfather with his love of all things Western. Nanjo's probably the only person who could enter Rokonjima despite being neither a family member nor a servant. He looked like a calm old gentleman as he listened to the discussion between Kyrie and the other women who sat near him. Considering how long he stayed by the side of our short-tempered grandfather, his generous heart was probably nothing to laugh at. Still, even though he was a family doctor, having anyone outside the Ushiromiya family attend a family conference was a little odd. It made me think that grandfather's condition might have worsened so much that it'd be a major topic of discussion at today's conference. After all, George said something like that just a second ago. Something about we've been getting continuous reports since the last year about grandfather didn't have long to live. It's nasty to think about, but consider how rich grandfather is. At the time of his death, his wealth will suddenly be released probably along with a fair share of our parents' stomach acid, and it'll lead to ulcers for everyone. After all, this sort of thing just gets messier when there's more wealth to be divided. There's a good chance I'll be talking about stuff like that at the family conference. Still, it's not like it's got anything to do with us kids. Or so they think. Finally, even though he hasn't shown up, let me introduce our grandfather. The person who should be sitting at the incipient's chair is Ushiromiya Kinzo. It really sucks. Everyone else in the family has these weird names, but he's got this perfectly normal one himself. If only his name were written Kinzo, but he let us call him Goldsmith or something, I'd totally freak out. As you could probably guess by now, he's a frightening person with an extremely short temper. I'm one of his grandchildren, not his son, and I haven't seen him since elementary school. Thanks to that, I have no memory of being beaten myself, but our parents were apparently raised with an iron fist. That earlier conversation between my dad and Uncle Kraus about who should go convince grandfather to come down seems pretty darn funny once you know their background. You can't really tell grandfather's story without covering that pivotal event before the Showa era. Until the Meiji and Taisho eras, the Ushiromiya family was great and prosperous. They owned several spinning mills, making them rich enough to just double over laughing every day as the money kept rolling in. Incidentally, grandfather was a member of a branch of the family that had pretty much nothing to do with the main family. Not only was he down on the list of people who could inherit the headship, but he had hardly any contact with the glamorous main family. However, this is going to be interesting. Okay. However, during the Great Kanto earthquake in the year Taisho 1923, the mansion owned by the Ushiromiya family. However, during the Great Kanto earthquake in the year Taisho 12, the mansion owned by the Ushiromiya family in Odawara was flattened. The spinning mills in Tokyo were all burned down in a huge fire, and the Ushiromiya family lost most of its wealth and family members in an instant. So once they started trying to figure out who was the successor to the Ushiromiya family should be, they apparently found no one remaining except Kinzo and his branch family. In Kinzo's later reminiscences, he referred to this as a good fortune, as good fortune so great that it overturned fate. With that, grandfather's boring everyday life did a 180. He was entrusted with reviving the dying Ushiromiya family, which had lost nearly all its wealth. However, just because he had been entrusted with this task didn't mean he could accomplish it. Apparently, those around him weren't really expecting much. However, this is when grandfather began displaying his extraordinary talent and good luck. Grandfather used all of the family's remaining wealth, as well as everything from the hair on his head to toenails, as collateral in order to borrow a massive amount of money. Once he built up a gigantic war chest, he immediately invested in businesses. It was like someone tumbling downhill on a bike without any brakes, and then jumping onto a neighboring bike, and then another one, like some crazy street performance. I'll bet everyone thought grandfather had no business ability whatsoever. However, after several miracles and turns of good luck, with coincidences piling up at every chance to take advantage of, he was suddenly in control of powerful connections with the occupying forces. At that time, MacArthur and the GHQ were the ultimate authorities in Japan. Grandfather, in a twinkle of an eye, began succeeding in business under the protection of the occupying forces, quickly becoming rich. By this point, it's probably safe to say that information, not luck, saved the day. He must have made some serious deep connections with the occupying forces. Grandfather knew beforehand about emergency demands that would be made for the Korean War. No, it was more than that. He must have predicted those emergency demands from the very beginning when he started investing his money. The history books made it sound like all of Japan made a large profit off the emergency demands during the Korean War, but that isn't actually true. Only a very limited of super rich played the money game and made an easy profit. Most of the citizens remained poor. In other words, Grandfather was a member of this extremely lucky group of winners. I'm pretty sure all this happened during the year Showa 25 or 1950 or so. The Great Kanto earthquake happened in Taisho 13, 1924, so that means Grandfather was able to revive the near-dead Ushiromiya family in only about 20 years to a level higher than it had ever been before. That's so insane. With that, you'd think he'd revive the main family in Odawara. But for some reason, he went and did something crazy like buying an entire small island in the Uzu archipelago. Buying an entire island is not something you can ordinarily do today. However, Grandfather was clever. He contacted the GHQ and applied for the establishment of a marine resource base. He acquired this island as a business property, then tossed that project aside and claimed it as his own plot of land. After the war, there were prevention measures against food shortages, and having the sponsorship of the GHQ meant that nobody could oppose him. From what I've heard, the Tokyo metropolis of that day offered this land to him practically for free. Later, Tokyo made difficulties by telling Kinzo to return the land, but the pushy GHQ intervened. Anyways, it seemed under the table bribes did their work well. In the end, the city gave up in frustration. Grandfather, with considerable skill and good luck, managed to weather the stormy seas of that period, obtaining a vast fortune and his own island. Of course, it probably wasn't all luck. He was obsessed with all things Western, which helped him cultivate his English skills. He was able to use this to take advantage and sink his teeth into the GHQ. A mansion was built on the island soon after. This mansion, in fact, Grandfather, with his love of the Western style, made this one uninhabited island a canvas upon which he could realize his dream to his heart's content. He now had the Western mansion of his dreams, overflowing with emotion and atmosphere, in a beautiful garden featuring all sorts of roses. And he had a private beach where nobody other than himself would be permitted to leave a footprint. This would be a dream for any boy. After that, he made good use of his fortune, becoming a large stockholder in the extremely stable iron and steel industries, and was just able to live an easy and comfortable life just using the dividends. Well, he's just that incredible. This kind of person that has the ability to foresee and predict the future, or at least that is how they're portrayed after the fact. But Grandfather denies all of that, repeatedly saying he was simply blessed with extraordinary luck. Anyway, even a lord like that can't help but grow increasingly eccentric when locked up alone on an island, where all his dreams are made real. Everyone knows that he had a Western obsession from the start, but none of our parents really know when his bizarre black magic hobby began. Did his love of black magic begin back when he became fascinated with everything Western? Or did his miraculous stretch of good luck while reviving his family cause him to feel this mysterious power in himself? At some point, Grandfather began to make the research of black magic his life's work. He filled his study up with suspicious books, chemicals, and magical items as he became increasingly bizarre. From what I heard, those around him warmly watching over him, figuring out that someone who had achieved success in life had the right to do as he pleased, but there's no way that's true. They were probably just creeped out thinking that's disgusting and I don't want to get involved. Anyway, that agitated period was an age of big gambles with both opportunities and risks. Let's say Grandfather was born in this time frame. Okay, I'm going to stop this video right here, guys. Yeah, we're kind of getting more into a lot more interesting stuff, learning about like kind of black magic, Beatrice. Uh, Shit's getting real now. So I'm excited because, yeah, this is a little over an hour, so I'm going to break it up. But yeah, pretty excited and yeah, pumped to get through this some more.